Om. 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 Satchidananda-rupaya Vishwotpatyadi-hetave Tapatraya-vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. Janmadyasya yatonvayaditarataschaarteshvabhignyaswarat Tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuryaha Tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kim va parerishvaraha Sadyo hridyavarudyatetra kritibihi Shushrushubistatchana. Hari Om, and greetings from Calgary, and a special greetings to all of our seekers who are gathered with Vilasini-ji in Jacksonville, and a joyous Vinayaka Chaturthi to all. What every one of us wants, and a more powerful word is needs, is more awareness. More awareness when we're driving, more awareness when we're communicating, more awareness in all directions. This is what the word Chinmaya means. Maya means to be filled with chit or awareness. A conducive way to become a more aware person is to be in a community or a study group where the focus is awareness. And I had referenced in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you feel a sense of belonging that comes with community, then you can start working on esteem. The majority of seekers that I interact with have an insecurity or many insecurities. First, you have to feel like you belong before you can start to feel secure. Leave alone the top of Maslow's hierarchy, which is actualization. In our vocabulary, that is liberation. When we had met last week, your discussion subject, your discussion question was, what stops you from living mindfully? Everyone remembers this discussion question. And my observation, yours were all right, what I had shared was FOMO. The fear of missing out makes our minds scattered. And so, a technique on how to mature out of FOMO is to raise the quality of your thoughts, which will automatically reduce the quantity of your thoughts. Please don't make mindfulness just another fad word. How do you feel the mind? How do you know if the mind is full? When you have higher quality thoughts, which leads to a reduction in thoughts, then what one comes to experience is JOMO, the joy of missing out, that what you want and need is in you. It doesn't matter what the next person has or the next person is doing. Vedanta and Bhagavata, our course, is for us to feel included, that we are in a community that cultivates inclusivity. We're raising the quality of our thoughts, and to practice directly with those around you and indirectly when you're outside of this controlled environment. When you go to lunch, when you go to work tomorrow, when you're in school, it is us feeling and practicing inclusivity. And for all of you who have read our poster, inclusivity leads to independence. Anyone who's a caregiver, what do you want for those whom you care for? Independence, financial independence. Countries want political independence. So many parents tell me that they want their children to get married so they become independent of their children. Now people ask me less questions about Vedanta, more about getting their kids married. And this is an efficient way to live. My last thought in our last class was, the most inefficient way to live is to live with stress. Nobody tells us that because we've normalized that. The most efficient way to live is to live independently. All that I've shared right now as an introduction, as an orientation, is symbolized in Raja Parikshita. Raja Parikshita. For those who know more about him, can you please type out in the chat, what is another name for Parikshita? I'd specifically shared this in our last class. Who protected him? Bhagwan Vishnu. Another name for him is Vishnu Rata. When he was born, he was so curious about who protected him. I feel as infants and toddlers, we are also very curious, but then we get educated and we take for granted that this body should just work. Raja Parikshita was one who was invested in his outer world. But when pressure came, when he was presented with the crisis that he's going to die in 168 hours, he shifted his investment from the outer world to the inner world. He sought out satsanga, exactly like we're doing. Now, I hope for most of us, we're not in this satsanga because of pressure and crisis, but rather we're being proactive. That pressure and crisis will come. This will help us to be balanced in all of this. In satsanga, what happens? As you associate, so you think, so you develop. Today, we are completing our Chinmaya Inspiration Yatra 16. This yatra was special. Only Devis joined us. There was 30 Devis and we hiked through Banff National Park, Jasper National Park. And very fittingly, yesterday, after we completed walking in a park, we all went to see Barbie. How many of you have seen Barbie before? It's so good. This was my second time and it was even better. And I was observing when Ken, and if you haven't seen this, who are you? When Ken is living in Barbie land, then his mind is very clear. But when Ken comes to the real world, his mind becomes super confused. See, that's dussanga. Barbie land is satsanga. The real world is dussanga. So Raja Parikshita shifted his investment from the outer to the inner. And he did this in the form of Bhagavata. Please try to remember what this word means. It's so full. Ta is defined as means. Va is defined as best. Ga is defined as moving, to move. And bha means light, means joy. So Bhagavata means best, to be moved to joy. When he invested in his inner world, he started to practice Bhagavata. It's not just a book you hold. In our ashram in Niagara Falls, our seekers are joining us. There's many new families and seekers who are joining us. And I was sharing with them that in our ashram, we want you to come and touch Bhagwan. You should come onto the altar. You should touch the feet of Bhagwan. You should hug Bhagwan if you're tall enough. Because we don't want there to feel like there's any separation between you and light. The more there's separation, the heavier you feel. The more closeness there is between you and light, the more light you feel. The better you relate with Bhagwan, the better you will relate with every being. A Devi told me here that when we met in 2014, I had shared with her, the best way to relate to beings is do more sadhana. Now, 10 years later or 9 years later, she told me she understood what I was saying. Relate to Bhagwan. This is through sadhana, and we'll just be better parents and spouses and children and workers and servers and teachers. Now, for those who are very new, and I'm using a term like Bhagwan, what is this Bhagwan? Infinity, out of compassion, has taken on a form and a name, which we refer to as Bhagwan. Bhagwan Ganesha, Bhagavati Devi, and so on. These are forms and names. These are icons of infinity or you. This is a most personal journey and experience. Srimad Bhagavatam is an educational text. It is an educational map. This is composed by Rishi Vyasa. Rishi Vyasa wanted to think about and write about bhakti or devotion. Now, I find in our society, in our vocabulary, we don't use the word devotion a lot, so we don't know what it feels like. If I can supplement this word with dedication. Whatever you're devoted to, you will be dedicated to. Whatever you're dedicated to, you will feel that devotion. Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. For those who join me for Meaningful Mornings, I believe we've completed around 570 verses. And that's taken us almost 3 years. Imagine we went through 18,000 verses. That snake would have bit us already. We would be dead. These 18,000 verses are spread over 12 skandhas or sections. Skandha and section are synonymous. For most of us, we began our course on Bhagavata in January of 2019. And we are going to complete this course in December of 2023, so just a few more months. So we will complete this over 5 years. We have invested deeply in this beautiful offering. For those who are newer, the recordings for our course are on Chinmaya Niagara's YouTube channel. You can catch up with all of this. I recently met a seeker who's in the middle of Arkansas. We physically never met each other, but somehow he got connected to our Live Vedanta podcast. We have like 150 episodes, which we've released over 5 years. He listened to all of them in 1 month. So for all of you hardcore Bhagavata students, you can listen to 4.5 years in 1 month if you wish. In May, we completed the 11th skanda. The 11th section is referred to as the head of Srimad Bhagavata. In Sanskrit, mukti. The teachings, the message of the 11th section is on mukti. Mukti means release or freedom. And there's 2 reasons for this. The more literal reason is that Bhagavan Krishna dissolved his name and form. When Bhagavan has no name and form, then that's infinity or awareness. So Bhagavan became free of a form and name. But now the more applicable message for us, in the 11th section, there was a lot of upadesha, or teachings on how we can be free. And as I was preparing for our class this morning, I was thinking about masters like Puja Swami Vivekananda or Puja Swami Chinmaya or Rishika Mukta, that many of them left behind padukas, a sandal, correct? And they did this as a reminder of their teachings. When Sri Bharata goes into the jungle and wants Bhagwan Rama to rule, Bhagwan Rama says, no, I'm following my responsibility. But what does Bhagwan Rama give to Sri Bharata? His padukas, and he carries them on his head and puts them on the throne, sharing that, what would Bhagwan Rama do? So this is why the 11th section is teaching us that one day our name and form will be dissolved or will die. How can you be free before that? In the 30th and 31st chapters of the 11th section, the way that we completed this section, it is very sad, but I'm going to share these details anyways. At one point, Bhagavan Krishna's family, they all became lightly drunk, lightly intoxicated. And in doing so, they started to goof around. And at one point, one of the males pretended to be pregnant and had gone to a wise person who was around there and said, please tell me the gender of my child. And that rishi, who can see what we can't see, knew that they were drunk with an intoxicant, but it was pervading their personality in the form of ego. And essentially that rishi said, what will be born from you is metal. Not a child made out of blood and bones, but metal. And immediately that piece of metal fell out of that pillow or whatever was in that male's abdomen area. Now Bhagavan Krishna's family was petrified by this wrong action. And so what they did, they never told Bhagavan. Instead, what they did was they shredded this piece of metal. And so much of the pieces of this metal was just put into the water, but there was one piece that they couldn't shred, and so they just threw it into the water. How many of you remember these details? Okay. Now we fast forward to chapter 30 and 31 of the 11th section. Now Bhagavan Krishna's family is not lightly drunk. In this chapter, they're heavily drunk. And in this feeling, there is bhaya, fear. In their outer and inward drunkenness, they started to fear each other. They're one family, but they were fearing each other. They started to fear Bhagavan Krishna. That's what happens with intoxicants and arrogance, is that separation becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And in this case, their fear turned into violence, into himsa. And these are powerful beings with lots of weapons, and they started to fight with each other, but their weapons were being destroyed. So in their intensity, they just started to grab whatever they could, and they started to grab the grass that was growing, but it was hard. It was as hard as metal. The metal shavings that went into the ocean eventually came back to the surface, and that became the substance of this grass. And this very strong grass, they started fighting with each other, and all of them died. An intense family war. And I had shared with all of you that why this is described, because this can be deeply misinterpreted. Bhagavan Krishna facilitated all of this because his own family was being egotistical. And Bhagavan Krishna was unaffected by all of this. And so I specifically shared that a way we can practice being like Bhagavan Krishna is to love fully and be independent fully. You give and give and give, but if someone is not rising in that giving, you are still to be independent from them. For many of us who are married, who have children, what is most challenging is attachment. Bhagavata teaches us to be loving and independent. And finally, after everyone has died, Bhagavan Krishna goes to the jungle. And he sits down with his left foot on his right thigh. And a hunter happens to be there and sees his toe, and he happens to have this arrowhead that's made of the one piece of metal which never got shredded. Have you all seen movies like Crash, where there's like 3 stories interconnected? Bhagavatam's like 1 million stories that are interconnected, but they all get closed, which is so respectable and very reverence-worthy that no detail is missed. And this hunter shoots at Bhagavan Krishna's toe. And I am saying that Bhagavan Krishna's body has died because we're oriented towards that. But know that Bhagavan Krishna is unaffected by all of this. With Bhagavan Krishna no longer present the way that the people were used to, a lot of change in society starts. And that's where I'm starting the 12th skanda, the final section. But one more thought before doing this. Here in Calgary, I was teaching our Devis about the Yaksha Prashna. This is a lovely reflective dialogue from the Mahabharata. And the answerer in this dialogue is Raja Yudhishthira, the most balanced out of the brothers. When Raja Yudhishthira finds out that Bhagavan Krishna is no longer with them, he lost his balance. When his brothers had died, he was still balanced. When Bhagavan Krishna died, he lost his balance and he left the kingdom and began his yatra. For those who are newer, our Devis are on this yatra not out of escapism, okay? They're doing this out of meaningfulness. And before he left, he made Raja Parikshita his successor. We started Bhagavatam with Raja Parikshita already being the leader. But how did he become the leader? That connection is made here too. The 12th skanda, the final section of this map, really this is the final section of our life. I had mentioned to all of you that Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us the art of dying. Bhagavad Gita teaches us the art of living. Our Upanishads teach us the art of life, not as a verb, but rather as a noun. First, we have to know the art of dying, to know the art of living, to know the art of life. The 12th section in Sanskrit focuses on apashraya. Apashraya means finality. In English, finality. The implication is our final foundation, our final destination, our final rest will be Bhagavat, will be divinity. And this is clear in the sense that I hope you know that Raja Parikshita's body, his form and his name does die. But he is resting in this foundation. Many teachers have shared that all of Srimad Bhagavatam is really directing us to this singular message that the foundation of all of the verbs you engage in, all of the nouns you identify with, it is divinity. This is not a story about Raja Parikshita. This is a mirror to our own individualities. In the first chapter of the 12th section, the whole chapter is focused on succession. I believe there's an HBO show that's very popular called Succession. That was copied from the first chapter of the 12th section. So very much about succession. And I know a lot of you have a love for history and so on. Very specifically, names like Chanakya are used. The Maurya Empire, Chandragupta being a Raja. Yes, we know these names because we've watched it on TV serials. When I was in high school and we studied world history, I remember seeing about the Mauryan Empire and Chandragupta, and I was telling my friends, that's me. So those details are shared in the first chapter. And in the end of the first chapter, that most specific observation is made that when Bhagavan Krishna leaves, Kali comes. With the dissolving of Bhagavan Krishna's form and name, the period, the vibration of Kali starts. And I'm going to read a shloka to you, but a key word here is Anudina. Someone tell me what Anudina means in the chat or here? Every day. The spirit, the vibration of Kali grows every day. So it's not, there's 100 years and then there's a pause and then another 100 years. It is happening. The word Kali has many meanings. I'm going to go from least important to most important. Least important, Kali means darkness. More applicable than that is fastness. Everything moves fast, yes. I feel like I just came to Calgary a day ago, but an entire week has passed. And the most awful is selfishness. In society where there is Kali, people only think and act for themselves, and really they only speak about them, speak about themselves too, correct? So now we move to the second chapter. I'm just introducing this. I will share much more when we join next week. In the second chapter, the first verse, Rishi Shuka shares, these things start to decline as selfishness starts to rise. Dharma, in English, religion. Satya, in English, there's lots of meanings. We'll use integrity. Shaucha, in English, cleanliness. People brush their teeth less. One night on our yatra, we all slept in an ice field, and it was intense. It was minus 3.5 degrees Celsius. Someone described this as twilight sleep, like you were so cold that you fell asleep, but then you were so cold your body woke you up, but then it's so cold you fell asleep again. And so that morning we tried to use the bathroom, but it was locked, so we all brushed our teeth with gum. So shaucha starts to decline. Kshama. Kshama means forgiveness. People hold grudges more. Then daya. Daya means mercy. People are less compassionate with each other. Bala. Bala here means physical strength starts to decrease. Like all of you are sitting on chairs right now. What if I enacted that starting next week, you have to sit on the floor with your legs crossed? Only half of you will come, correct? Bala is gone. Smriti. Smriti means mental strength, or even just remembering. Just remembering. If I asked you, what was the focus of the first section of Bhagavatam? Yes, scratch your head, all of those things that will help you to remember. All of this decreases. Religion, integrity, cleanliness, forgiveness, mercy, physical strength, mental strength, anudina. This goes away with selfishness. Now our one verse coming from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is verse number 2. This is chapter 2, section 12. Vittam eva kalau nirnam janmacharana gunodayaha dharmanyasa vyavasthayam karanam balameva hi. Sharing this in English. Vittam eva, which means wealth alone. Do I have to continue with this explanation? Kalau nirnam, wealth alone, is what people live by in the period of Kali. Janma achara, the way that they're born, as in their family, more so achara, their lifestyle. Gunodayaha, this is not indicative of one's personality. Wealth alone is indicative of one's personality. If you are rich, you must be virtuous. And if you're poor, you must be vicious. Accurate or inaccurate? I know you don't feel that, but in your interactions with people, accurate or inaccurate? If a rich person came in wearing fake jewelry, would you question that jewelry? If a poor person came in wearing real jewelry, would you question that? See, now it applies to you, correct? Before it was the next person, but now it's me. Dharma, which means rightness. Nyasa, which means rationale. Vyavasthayam, the establishment of the rules of society should be based on rightness and rationale. Karanam balam evahi, but instead society only functions on power. Those who are powerful are right and rational, and those who have no power are wrong and irrational. I catch myself treating our children like that sometimes, that because I'm bigger than them, that I'm right, but many times when my mind becomes quiet enough and they're explaining something, they are right. So these teachings are most applicable. I'm almost done. There's lots of indicators of what happens when selfishness grows. This one is so relevant. And remember, This was composed thousands of years ago. In Kali, plants get reduced to the size of tiny grass. Trees become small and shadowless like shami plants, and clouds begin to emit only lightning. Shall I define this in English in 2 words? Climate change. Correct? Trees become small, fire comes from above, fire comes from below. Climate change. With the advancement of Kali, when humans have begun to be animal-like, the Lord will incarnate again in a form of sattva for the protection of dharma. What is the antidote to Kali? Bhagwan Kalki. To be elaborated upon in our next class. Oh.